You ready? Okay. All right. So at this time, we're going to open the pre-application part of the hearing, not the necessarily official hearing, for the purpose of hearing a pre-application for 225 Reservoir Avenue, Russo and Rizzio mixed-use development. Again, this is not the official meeting. It's a pre-application for those listening at home. The pre-application process is afforded when certain applicants would like input from staff and the commission before they take great expense and work to go and create a larger development and all the work entitled for it, to see what the direction is. The microphone for introduction is yours.
Chairman Raymond Rizzio. To
Make it green, Ray.
button.
Under the microphone at the base. The base of the microphone. There you go.
There we go. I still don't like the angle of that TV camera. You get the back of your head all the time. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Raymond Rizzio. I've been before you many times over the years, and I'm here representing Ari Mitnick and AMS Acquisitions, basically a regional developer of elderly, age-restricted housing within the New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut area. Very successful group. They've been looking at Trumbull as a great market through the help of Paul Timpanelli and some other people in Trumbull. They've looked at a few sites. They were looked at one part on Trefoil Drive and kind of were directed by staff, economic development, basically to look more in the Lindeman Drive area, Reservoir Avenue area, thinking that was a good site. I noticed on tonight you actually have an application for an age-restricted regulation, so at least that's going to be before you. I looked at that regulation. Hopefully you folks will pass it, and I think this project would fit that regulation perfectly. So we looked at a site, if you know, it's 225 Reservoir Avenue. It's about almost a 6.5 acre site. We believe it's a perfect site for it. It's as you go up Reservoir Avenue, you go past some housing on either side of it.
If you tilt it, then
Sure.
the camera
Is that
can
better?
show it. Yeah, then the TV can tilt it like that.
There we go.
There you go. Make it.
So, for the TV, this is, and everybody else, it's outlined in blue. Property's a little over 6 acres. We believe it's this use will be an excellent transition use as you move into all the single-family residential housing as you go up Reservoir Avenue. I think you actually have an application on one of your, also maybe tonight, I'm not sure if it's tonight, for some workforce housing along Reservoir Avenue. In any event, we believe, and I know the town has been very anxious, and I think there's been a big gap in town, the demand for 55 and over housing is huge. People wanting to sell their larger homes, basically move into something that is economical, it's got some amenities, and also then has the ability to stay in the town of Trumbull. We find that most of the people, although I've done a bunch of age-restricted, in fact, I wrote the first age-restricted regulation in town, and that was done 55 and over down on Twin Brooks Village, over on White Plains Road, which I think we did about 20 years ago. So that was the first age-restricted housing regulation that was written in town. And it's great to see the way this has expanded, and the town has basically matured through, in bringing as kind of, I don't want to say industry has died, but industrial development has kind of struggled up in that Lindeman Drive area until the commission passed the regulation that allowed for regular market rate housing. And I think they allowed for about 600 units to go up there, and it has created a real environment up there. So this is a 6 acre piece on the corner of Lindeman and Reservoir Avenue. There's also the big power lines run through the back, so you see this swath of undeveloped property back here. And what's nice about that, it really creates a nice buffer. So it'll always be a vegetated buffer that won't be built on. So we've come up with a plan with about 155 units. There'll be an main entryway to a nice beautiful circle that'll come off of Lindeman Drive. You'll also be able to come off Reservoir Avenue, the full ingress and egress off Reservoir Avenue. But our main focus will be on coming off of Lindeman with the primary source of the building facing Lindeman. One of the things we met with staff, and they really liked the idea of bringing some kind of mixed use up to this location, because right now it's kind of it's basically a service desert. There's housing up there and there's industry up there, there's no retail. We've come up with a plan that we believe will add about maybe 4,000 to 6,000 square feet of housing, of retail, so that you can have some of those services that you might need, maybe just a little general store, barber shop, nail shop, something that the residents could take advantage of. We don't believe this will ever be a retail corridor, but with the housing that's there, we believe some smaller mom and pops will be able to succeed there, whether it's a sandwich shop, a pizza place, things that would be able to basically provide some small retail services for the people that are there. And also, what you don't want to do is, as you see Trumbull Center's being rejuvenated, hopefully, as you see that started this week where they tore down some of the old buildings, and there's going to be a real push to bring retail down there. I don't ever see this being a retail corridor. There just isn't the traffic numbers to generate that would require basically a strong credit nationwide tenant that would go in here. But we do believe, at the request of the economic development, that there should be some smaller retail component that people would be able to be near. So we've come up with that plan. Our proposal is basically a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, beautiful pool and recreation area in the middle, a large amenity package including a gym and other services, movie theaters, lounges, library, some food offerings. They'll have like
Maybe a golf simulator.
golf simulator. Yes, sorry. Sealan Pather, who was with Beinfeld, is and our designer. I'm stealing most of his presentation, but
That's okay.
He's doing it too.
everybody's used to that. So there'll be a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, split about equally, and we plan on doing, in our project, is about 155 units. We will landscape the property, we'll make it beautiful. As you can see, there's a large buffer to the rear. Let's see what else we have.
Alternate retail location.
Yes, what's that? And then we also put an alternate relocation.
Retail.
As I said, this is pre-app. If the commission thinks that this is worthy, we will pursue full-blown plans. Hopefully, you'll pass the regulation tonight that permits this type of application, and we'll get back to you in front of you as soon as we can. So there's another alternate retail location that can come off Reservoir Avenue. As we talk more with zoning staff as to where we think it'd be more appropriate, we would consider that as we go forward. Let's see, Sealan, I'm gonna ask Sealan, who is the architect behind this. They have done some incredible job. If you know Beinfeld out of Norwalk, they are probably one of the top architects, housing architects in Fairfield County. They have done just some tremendous projects. I'm gonna have Sealan tell you a little bit about themselves, what their vision is for the property, and how they see it, and I guess I'll just be Merrill and handle the board.
Do you have examples of what the applicant has already
Yes, I
constructed
do.
and owned?
Yeah, for the record, my name is Sealan Pather, I'm the principal at Beinfeld Architecture.
Try that again.
Sealan Pather, principal at Beinfeld Architecture. Thank you. So let me start with that, Ray.
Okay.
So Ray has done a better job than I ever could of explaining this property. So I'll just give you a brief overview. We do a lot of this work, mixed use and residential. This is Summerfed. With regards to the site, it's early days, really early days, right? But we located it away from the street, took advantage of 6.2 acres or so of site. But when we're done, we'll focus on placemaking. We'll try and create a signature product. We'll try and refine the edges, make the area walkable, especially around our site, and then hopefully add value to the area. And that would be the overall vision eventually. This is examples of our work. The Anchorage in Fairfield. This is one that's going up right now in Darien. This is phase 1 of 2 phases in the center of Darien. It's reimagined what downtown Darien is. Before we did that, we completed about 8,000 square foot of retail and 122 units down in Norton Heights in Darien. So we have some experience in trying to create a place, and a place that's good for retail, for residential, and a place where people want to come. So these are some of those, and this is some work in New Haven.
We've had
and South Norwalk.
developers in front of us who are developers and project managers, and then they transfer the property. and then we've had some who actually maintain the property. And one of the strong points for us is people who maintain it, not that there's a preference for approval or denial, but, you know,
Sure,
what
that's-
the outcome of the property is, and when it's presented to us, or if it will, you not necessarily have to present it, but it's
No, but
one of the
it's-
things that interests us.
And I'll tell you, that's one thing that you'll find very interesting about AMS. AMS builds, develops, manages these properties. They have a significant financial partner, typically the Carlyle Group has been their financial partner on projects. They build them, manage. This is not a developer who's looking to gain approval for 150 units and flip it out to you know, some national or somebody else. This is a developer who has saw that there's a demand in Trumbull. They've worked with Paul and Steve Hodson for the last couple of years to identify the property that they can build and manage and hold. So they are, this is why we're here. You're dealing with the architect for actually the people that are gonna build it. They have two in New Jersey, one in Westchester that's getting, and I think another one, three in New Jersey, one that's getting, is about to be issued a CO in Westchester, all between 100 and 150 units that they built and managed.
And I'll just add, we're on the team because we're going to break ground next year on 200 units in Wilton with the same developer and same idea that they're going to hold.
Yeah, I mean, there are, the commissioners, I'll let them chime in when they want. There are many opinions in Trumbull. Some people embrace the developments and some people do not. But one of the things that has taken place in the past decade or so is the quality of what's being built. As we all know, there's like 24 houses for sale in Trumbull out of 24,000. It's the place to be, and people come, and these developments are popular because of the quality. So that's something that we're interested in. It's not why you want to build it and what you've already done. It is what's the substance of what you're going to put in the ground also matters.
This is why I can say this really clearly tonight. I'm a principal in a project that we built in Fairfield. First really high-end apartment building in Fairfield. If you go down Uncle Road, it's right next to the downtown Fairfield train station. Meinfeld designed, and like the project that our clients are designing, this beautiful structure that's within walking distance, 500 feet to the Fairfield train station, within 1,000 feet to the dead center of Fairfield Center Green. It was all the neighborhood actually embraced this high-density development we've had, and it has worked tremendously. It is maybe the nicest apartment building in this area of Fairfield County. Sealand designed it. Fairfield wanted a top-notch architect and a top-notch design to basically put in the center of their downtown. And this has gotten rave reviews. It has been full since day one. And I think the people with Meinfeld will create a similar community here. And what they've done here, similarly, is that people have come not just to be there for a year. They've made it a community, and it's become their residence. And I think that's what we're looking to establish here.
Let's pretend you have 4 minutes left. Tell us the important parts so I can see if the commissioners have any questions.
Well, this is the last bit, which is an example of some of the work. We weren't the architects on this one, but this is a development in New Jersey by AMS, senior housing. So we thought we'd show you that. But Mr. Chairman, I'll just finish by saying our firm particularly would only come into a project into an area like this with the same sentiments that you expressed, only if we could add value.
Rich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things. We know that industrial use is difficult here. The highway access is poor. The bridge is too low. There's a whole host of reasons why we know it's somewhat outdated of a zone designation. Are these planned to be market rate apartments, 55 plus? What's the goal?
Market rate.
Okay. And just a quick question for one other thing. We planning on applying for a zone change, or is it an overlay that you're going to apply here?
My understanding tonight, following us, I think it's the second or third application, will be an application by people who are currently here tonight that are actually applying to create an age-restricted elderly housing zone and an overlay zone and an IL2 zone.
It's part of what's on the agenda.
They're
So,
connected.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Tonight's agenda, it's one of the things that, staff made sure to let us know is, you are correct. There would be a text amendment required to allow for the age-restricted housing in an IL2 zone. And as happens in other parts of town, they're focused in areas rather than the whole town because you deal with them in pockets. And at the same time, in parallel that this project is here, there's a similar project in the same area already coming forward with the text amendment to provide for themselves that would provide for them. So if it all passes tonight, they would be allowed down the road to at least apply, not necessarily get approved, but if they didn't, they would have to go through the same steps, first part that the other applicants are doing tonight.
We've been looking at this for a couple of years. When they've identified the property, it just happened by coincidence that there's somebody else who has a plan in the same general area. It's my understanding the regulation before you tonight will apply to this general area. Originally, there was a limitation, I think that was going to apply to just Cambridge and Old Town Road, but that's now been removed. And I believe the application before you tonight.
Let's let them,
Be for the entire zone, the entire area.
Okay.
okay, anything else?
Thank you.
Good. Karen?
Just a couple things. So there's not going to be any affordable components. There's going to be no set aside for affordable. It's all going to be market rate.
Well, depending on what your regulation says, I guess.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
if your regulation requires that there's 10% affordable, then we're going to end up following your regulation.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm not familiar with the company that's there and what they do. Are there any environmental concerns on that property?
We're not, I mean, yeah,
okay.
there will be some, I think there will be a cleanup required
Okay.
as part of the acquisition,
Okay.
which I think is a good thing
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing is, being that there is so much development down there, just concerns about infrastructure and the sewers and the capacity and all of that. I just,
We'll have to get
Yeah.
WPC approval.
Yeah.
We'll have to show that it can adequately handle the
Okay.
sewers. I would think things have been upgraded as you have 600 apartments further down the
Right.
line. I think the line is relatively new. One of the things that, as far as infrastructure is, I think, the good news about the age-restricted housing is you tend not to have that overburden the traffic, because Reservoir Avenue is still one lane each way,
Yeah.
same with Lindeman Drive. We think it's a perfect location for it, because it's an excellent transition into your single-family homes, yet it's surrounded by, across the street, both on Reservoir and on Old Town, with similarly situated, but it's market rate.
yeah. I do have some concerns about the traffic because I think even though it's 55 and plus, there's still a lot of people that are going to be going to work and coming home from work. So, yeah.
Well, one of the
Sure,
things,
it's something
hopefully,
you're
I
going
mean,
to think about too, obviously.
when I first wrote the first age-restricted regulation, I thought 55 was pretty old. When I was 40. Right now, yeah, I'm still working, and we're all still working. But I think what happens, we like to look at it as active adult.
Any more questions? Rob, you got anything to add before we let them go?
No.
Thanks for your time. We'll talk with staff and, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. And, you got any of those electronic drawings you want to leave with staff at some point? We'll let staff know what we think and they'll feed back to you. Thank you very much.
Commission, thanks for accommodating us.
If you ever have the Westchester designs too, are they on that plan or no?
We'll get you everything.
Yeah, okay.
All right. All right, the regular meeting will start in 3 or 4 minutes, folks. Okay, good evening, everybody. At this time, we will officially open the Planning and Zoning meeting for Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. If everyone would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening, everybody. It's the last meeting of the year and preparation for next year, so we have some housekeeping to do first, right? So we'll do the roll call. Commissioner Del Vecchio is here, Commissioner Deacon is here, and I am here, Linda. Mr. Silber and Mr. Cousins are absent, all right? So for those in the audience, we have a quorum and we're going to continue. So we have 3 out of 5 and we will be going forward. So some more of our housekeeping for end of the year, commissioners. We have to revote on and approve the bylaws. There are no changes from last year's bylaws. They're submitted as is, as they were. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Just to confirm, it says 7 o'clock, but we can change those to 7:30, right?
It's always said that. We leave it just in case. The start time is dedicated on each announcement. So that's all in favor, aye? Aye. Good. Okay, so at this time, we will do elections of officers for the 2025 year. Is there a nomination for Chair of Planning and Zoning?
Mr. Chairman, how are you? I would like to nominate Fred Garrity to continue as chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Is there a second? Second, Mr. Deacon. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Thank you very much. Nominations for Vice Chair of Planning and Zoning.
I would like to nominate Tony Silber to continue on as vice chair of the Planning and Zoning
Is
Commission.
there a second? Second. Any others? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Nominations for Secretary. I will nominate Commissioner Deacon
I will
for
second.
Secretary.
I will second that.
Seconded. Any others? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Thank you. Congratulations to all the new officers. So, acceptance of the 2025 meeting dates that were distributed. They're the same as always, looking for any significant changes for any of the new holidays and older holidays. Any questions on next year's calendar? None? There a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the calendar
Second.
for 2025.
None? Any questions? None? All in favor? Aye. 1, 2, 3. All set. Linda? Okay, on with the meeting. The first application is a text amendment. Applicant 12 Cambridge Drive Realty LLC is requesting to create Article 2, Section 4.2, Age-Restricted Housing Overlay Zone in an Industrial Zone IL2 of the Trumbull zoning regulations to permit age-restricted housing development on properties greater than 5 acres within the IL2 zone. Copy of the regulation is on file with the Trumbull P&Z office. Town Clerk, file 2418. Name and address for the applicant.
My name is Ryan Hoyler.
Press that green button.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Ryan Hoyler. I'm with Robinson and Cole, and I am here for the applicant 12 Cambridge Drive LLC. With me this evening, I have my colleague Brian Smith. I also have David Weiss, who I believe just got out of traffic on his way up from New York, for the applicant.
No sympathy. Zero. I work in Queens.
I also have Andrea Stressman with Granoff Architects and Zachary Chaplin with Stonefield Engineering and Design with me tonight. We're here tonight for an application for a text amendment. If it possible, I'd like to share my screen and put the presentation up. So let me start my little presentation here, and hopefully you all can see it. Great. All right. So originally we were to be here in November. I think there weren't enough. That's fine. We're here tonight. So apologies, I haven't changed the date on my title slide. But we are looking to create a overlay housing zone that would fall within the IL2 zone, and it would be for age-restricted housing. So the intent here is to provide housing opportunities in an aesthetically pleasing community for those 55 and over. It is not a development application here tonight. Under our text amendment, we would be required to come back to you for both the site plan and special permit application to go through the actual development application. Additionally, prior to coming back with the site plan and special permit application, our text amendment states that we will need to get approval from utilities, the police office, and wetlands before we come back with any kind of site plan or special permit. That said, I do have some drawings and designs here tonight along with a basic site plan so that as the commissioners, you understand what we're aiming for here with our overlay text amendment. Again, this would create an overlay housing zone for age-restricted housing within IL2. It only applies to properties within IL2 and that have at least 5 acres of land. So the IL2 zone exists at the very northern tip of Trumbull and at the very southern tip of Trumbull, right on the Bridgeport border. In the southern area, there are between 5 and 6 properties, depending on, there's one property that's right on the 5-acre cusp that we're not sure whether it would fall under this, that would theoretically fall under our zone. There are a handful of properties up along Corporate Drive on the northern end that may as well, although most of the Corporate Drive properties are under 5 acres. So we're really looking to utilize this within the southern portion of the zone. Again, our site is at 12 Cambridge Drive, and you'll see that in a minute here once they get back up there. Again, the maximum density here that we were looking at under the regulations would be no more than 25 units per acre. At least 10% of the units must be affordable pursuant to our proposed text amendment, and that would be at 80% of AMI, adjusted median income. There will be at least 100 square feet of recreation space for each 4 units. We do encourage mixed use, and indeed our application when we come back with the site plan or special permit would be for a mixed use. The property currently houses a building on the western portion of the property that has, I believe there's a visiting nurse service and a couple other commercial entities in there. We would be constructing a new structure over the eastern portion of the property where the parking lot is now that would be solely residential. But as a single use, they would be a mixed use within the same parcel there. We are also, because of the type of building with the next door neighbor with the commercial use, we're going to encourage shared parking. I can go over parking a little bit. I think that's better left for the site plan and special permit application. But under our requirements here, we would require at least 1.5 spaces for each unit. And again, we would encourage shared parking pursuant to the existing zoning regulations. That's Article 4, Section 4.10 of the existing zoning regulations that encourage such shared parking. Again, we would have to come back to you with a site plan or special permit to actually move ahead with the approval. So this commission will still retain discretion in its review of the development process as we move forward. And again, we will need approval from Wetlands, the Police Commission, and the Water Pollution Control Authority. This advances a number of town policies in a number of ways, specifically with respect to the town's housing goals. The zoning regulations seek to promote housing choice and economic diversity. The POCD seeks to encourage new housing opportunities for the elderly and encourage housing affordable to working families and single individuals. And the moratorium that you currently have on multifamily housing does not apply to those age-restricted housing applications here. In this case, we are going to have at least 10% affordable. When we actually do get to the site plan and special permit, I can explain that a little bit. I'll show it in a minute. We're going to be rounding up a little bit, so you'll actually get something like 11% of the units will be affordable housing within the project that we're looking at. And it will also provide that age-restricted housing for those people that are maybe looking to downsize in their homes or those over 55 that are still working in the community that we would like to stay within the community if we can. In 2020, the town commissioned a planning study of the IL2 zone. It determined that residential development was viewed as positive within that zone. It also suggested that the town prioritize housing, augmenting housing stock, and encourage shared parking between office and residential uses. It also noted that revisions to the code are necessary to advance those goals. And that's what we're here tonight trying to do, is that revision to the code so that we can get that age-restricted housing with the affordability in the IL2 zone in an area that this really fits for housing. The Affordable Housing Plan, which was, there was a plan passed in 2018. I believe there was also a plan voted on in May of 2023 by this very commission. And those also seek to encourage both workforce and private affordable housing in this marketplace. And again, this will be age restricted, but as we know, there are a lot of people over 55 that are still working, and for those looking to downsize, this is exactly what we're trying to put forward here. The Affordable Housing Plan that was previously passed talked about how strategies to provide for housing options that support seniors that would like to remain in Trumbull. So again, this zone text amendment would help push in that direction. This is the site location. So it's, again, in the southern portion of the town, in that IL2 zone. It's right up against the town boundary there with Bridgeport to the south. You can see the site there. I'll zoom in on it a little bit in a minute. To the east, or to the west, I apologize, is that existing building, and then the portion to the east is where we would be developing.
I want to help you help us.
Absolutely.
You can focus more on the impact,
Of course.
than the site. You know, because we understand where it is. We don't need to hear it twice. We know where it is. You can reference it and go back to it. But
Understood. Understood.
we need little of the devil of the detail, but the high level stuff is good because we're getting the impact.
Good, good. So I'm going to kind of move through the next, you know where the site is. You can see that, you know, off to the east of it and to the south of it is residential. I will point out, again, I know you know where the site is, but that building immediately to the northwest is a medical building. And one of the things that we talked about with town staff as part of our development was creating more walkability between our site and that existing medical building. There is a dermatology institute and a medical institute that deals with kidney health within that building, and trying to create that walkability is something that we're trying to do here. We do have, this is the proposed plan, so you can see a little bit of it. It's also in the packets, and I have 11 by 17 handouts if anyone would like them. Would you like me to circulate the handouts real quickly?
Whatever you have, it's your presentation.
Okay, well, if you can see this, basically, we are going to have underground parking with another level of ground level parking above it, and then levels of housing above that. So it's referred to here as a 4-story housing plan. So again, there'll be underground parking, the ground level parking, and then 4 floors of residential above that. I am also circulating, and you will see these renderings that we have done. As of right now, we are still in the process of kind of nailing down some of the tiny engineering details, but this should generally be the plan that we would be looking at when we come before you with a site plan and special permit.
So you're 5 stories above ground.
Correct. That's one way to look at it, yes. It's kind of, the grading's a little weird, so at one point it is 1 story above ground, at another point it's kind of like a half story. So, because of the way the grading on the site is. So it's kind of like 4.5 stories above.
Old Town is less.
What's that?
From Old Town is less.
Yes, from Old Town, from the side of Old Town, it looks more like 4 stories. So that residential portion to the south and to the east, they're going to be looking at a 4-story building above ground. It's going to be 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and studio units. And again, it's going to be aimed at over 55. 10% of it will be set aside as 80% AMI. And again, based on the unit count and the way we're actually doing this when we come forward with the site plan,
I only pay attention intermittently, so aimed
oh,
is incorrect. It will be restricted to. There you go.
it would be
Does that help?
It will be restricted to
There you go. That's what happens when I pay attention.
80% of the adjusted median income, which I believe is something
When I
along
say restricted, I mean the 55.
the 55. That's correct.
That's what I mean.
That's correct.
It won't be aimed
Yes.
at 55.
It won't be aimed at 55.
It will be
It'll
restricted to 55.
That's correct. It'll be restricted to 55 and older.
Right.
But again, our market for this is those 55 and older.
Right,
So
right. One's intent, one's requirement.
That's correct. It's both aimed and restricted to.
Yep.
So, but yes, again, 80% of it, or 10% of the units will be restricted to 80% AMI, which I believe is currently approximately $60,000 for a single person and $83,000 for a 4-person family. Based on the most recent affordability study from the town, there are nearly 3,000 households in the town at that 80% AMI. So this is, again, something trying to incorporate those things from the IL2 study and the affordable housing study to permit that type of housing that this town wants to develop within that IL2 zone.
So your projected mixed use and housing is all in one singular structure.
It's 2 structures across the same parcel. So if you look at the site plan we've provided, immediately to the south of the proposed structure is the existing, it's the south on the page. In real life, it's to the west. That's the existing building. That building will remain. It's all part of the same parcel. So our building will be solely residential. And the mixed use aspect of it would come from the fact that the existing commercial building and our building are on the same site within the same
Yeah,
parcel.
I got lost in the presentation. I was figuring the highlight was all yours. The faded gray, I wasn't paying attention.
Understood.
I got it.
Understood. So we do have some renderings of the proposed structure once it's built. We think they look very good, and again, coming in from those residential neighborhoods to the south and from the east, they're going to be seeing that 4-story structure. It's going to be closer to 5 stories at the north, western end of the building. That's kind of part of that existing medical development there along Cambridge Drive. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Andreas and Zach and just have them speak about any aspects of the presentation. If you could come up real quick, Zach, thank you. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Zach Chaplin with Stonefield Engineering and Design, civil engineer on the project. Just real brief, I think from like a site layout standpoint, I think the building fits in very nicely. As just mentioned, it's east of an existing commercial building that's going to remain. So it's kind of like secluded in a certain way. The access on Cambridge Drive, it kind of dies into our site. So it's kind of nice that it's behind the commercial building, and then there's a bit of a wooded area around the perimeter. We are proposing a new access point on Old Town, so that'll provide good connectivity around the building, especially for fire and emergency vehicles. There are, of course, 124 dwelling units and 326 total parking spaces. 140 of those parking spaces would be inside the building. We also want to make sure we landscape the site really well. So if you take a look at the rendering, there's an abundance of landscaping throughout the site. Other important thing to note is that there's a 30-foot grade change across the property from north to south. So that's already been looked at carefully. We've actually provided a preliminary grading plan just to make sure everything works. Slopes aren't too steep, and that's kind of how the building's been designed, as you heard, where it's 1 story higher on one side compared to the other. I think it's important to note where it is higher, no one's really going to see it at that point because that's kind of within our property. The 4 stories, what you're going to see on Old Town. There's a nice amenity area that's been designed. I'll let our architect Andreas speak to that. But I think overall, it's laid out well. It's a safe and efficient layout, and I think is a good spot for this kind of use.
Good evening, members. Andreas Stresemann, Granoff Architects. We are a Greenwich-based architectural company, 30 people. We do a lot of this type of work. We are known for very high-end and high-quality design, and this is another example of our work. How do I bring up the render? Sorry? Can you bring up the render? How do I go? Okay. Okay, when we approach the design, we try to be respectful to the area in material and architectural language. We designed a building that we would consider transitional. We integrated some more traditional elements with that clapboard siding. We did a crown molding on top. The layout of the apartments provides outdoor space for every single one of them. Everybody has a balcony. In addition, as I go through them, one big element of this development is a 6,000 square foot amenity space, 2 stories. The design is very much based towards, being able to mingle, to socialize within the building. Again, age restricted. There's a gym in there. There will be rooms where they can play mahjong and whatever other activity there will be offered for everybody. As you see, the amenity space is sunken in, so there's a nice outdoor space, private, quiet. There's also like a pickleball court on the side, and overall it's a very green area where you can just go for walks. So that's a very important element.
I don't want to get deep on this,
Okay.
but one of the things you can take back with you is the ideas that you may come up with to take away the antiseptic look of a corporate building that we now want to put apartments in, because that's what it looks like. I know that has been many conversations from many developments in the past to see what you can do to the tops of the building or the windows or the frame or something. Not trying to get you to spend millions of more dollars, but it should look a little more like a residence than a converted, what it is, corporate building, to the best of your ability. The squared off crown molding is nice, but
I
give it a
hear you
shot.
loud and clear. Okay, again, this is our first step.
Yep, that's
into
why
the
we're all
design.
here. That's why we're all
Exactly.
here, and we're not talking about your application, but these are the pictures that you're showing us. We're only talking about the language that
I
would
hear
allow
you.
you to go forward. And the same thing in a pre-app. We're just giving you our opinions that, you don't want to come here in the 11th hour and say, how come nobody told me we were playing a different game? So,
Hear you loud and clear. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and we really do appreciate the feedback tonight, and we will take that to heart as we move forward. But I do want to circle back that, as you point out, Mr. Chair, we're not here tonight on
Right.
the development plan. We're here tonight on the text amendment.
Right.
And what this text amendment is trying to do is implement those changes that were talked about in the IL2 study and in the affordable housing study. While we plan on developing our site, this also provides the opportunity for both this commission and town staff to work with other developers within the IL2 zone to work for affordable and workforce style housing, with age-restricted housing being what we're going for here.
I know our attorney has a couple questions, and then I want to go to the commissioners while we're. Karen, you have anything that you want to ask on the language part, at least?
I don't think so at the moment.
Okay. Rich?
I'm looking at the map here. So, just specifically to this property, that 2-story commercial building would remain.
That's correct, yes, and it would still continue to be in use. It's in use now. We have parking studies to show how the spaces will work with the shared spaces and everything, but that would remain in use as a commercial building.
Okay. And there was I had to do a little math here, but it appears that building is over 150 yards long. Gotta be.
That may be the case. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head with respect to the length of the building, but yes, that may be the case.
Okay. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Mr. Cordone, you have any questions?
Yes, Attorney Hoyler, little feedback there. Appreciate the interaction with your office on the application. A couple of questions for you. Thank you. So I know we had some discussions about defining a location of where the zone could be applied to. So, in light of the pre-app that happened earlier tonight, I assume your client, and just confirm this, that you would not have an objection to an amendment that would limit the overlay zone to frontage on Reservoir Ave and or Cambridge or Old Town Road. So in other words, it could apply to your property and could also apply to that other pre-app, but it defines it to what you call the southern area of the IL2 zone. You would
That's correct. We would not object to such a change tonight. And again, we did originally submit a change that we have rescinded that would have restricted it just to Old Town and Cambridge Drive. We're happy to talk about, putting that back in and maybe adding Reservoir Ave if that's what this commission wants to do or whatever.
that's the question. You would not object to that change?
We would not object to
Okay,
that change.
Thank you, Counselor, so we could proceed with that. And then the second question is, or it's thing that we had spoken before previously, the commission has 3 members tonight.
Correct.
You would need a unanimous vote for that to pass, as it's a majority of the commission to pass a regulation. So it's up to the commission to decide whether to have the hearing continued or not, but I wanted to ask what your client desires. this evening.
Understood. If the commission, if the 3 members, we would be happy to keep it open. If we think that there's going to be any issue with getting it approved tonight, or that we'd like to be in front of any of the other commissioners, we would be happy to keep it open if that's the way it goes. In fact, if we don't think we're going to get approval tonight, we would request that it remain open.
Yeah, we're not going to play sides. I'll make that decision
Understood.
as we proceed.
Understood.
No, that's it.
And just briefly, now that have talked to the attorney real quick, there is a minor change that we do need to make. It's on page 2 under section 4.2.4. The last paragraph there that starts the landscaping and perimeter buffer. It should read, section 4.6 shall not apply to projects within the age-restricted housing overlay zone. That is a typo, and that word, instead of to age-restricted or to residents 55 years old or older, it would just be projects. The rest of the text amendment restricts the use to 55 years or older. So, are there
Anything else?
any further questions from the commission at this point? Or?
No. Is staff, Rob, you have anything to add at this point?
I just had a question. I know this is going to be a new building. It looks very nice. So you're going to have the office building and the residential on the same parcel.
That's correct.
That building that's office right now is what, from the 80s, 90s? I assume so.
Believe it may even be older than the 80s, but yes. Yeah.
So I keep thinking if there's any type of ability to do uniformity between those 2 buildings,
Okay.
where you have this beautiful new building and then you have kind of a, just at least a facade. If you could at least look at that facade.
Yep.
So, people are more enticed with it because they're going to keep driving by it. Once if they see a nice landscaping and a nice improved facade updated to that side, I think it'd be definitely a win for every party here.
Understood. That's absolutely something we will look at when we come back with the site plan and special permit.
Great. And another thing is that the regulations call for 4 stories max, I believe so.
4 stories above parking.
4 stories
Yes.
of a parking. I know in the residential A regulations it talks about that being the requirement in the residential zone too. So I think that's I think you have a max of 60 feet.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's.
And we are right up there with the 60 feet.
Yeah, I think if they're 55, I
Yeah,
think
we're
you're
at 50.
55.
We're doing things with the roof and any of the parapets that will be up there and any equipment to mask it specifically from views from Old Town.
And the thing that we have to remember is that this is at the end of a road.
Correct.
It's not the only people that are going to see it are the people that are going to it.
Right,
Really,
I mean-
because once you go to Old Town, due to the topography, like I think your engineer was saying, 30
Correct.
foot grade change, you're only going to see the top or maybe a story. So I
Correct.
think it's really just going to be affecting those people that are driving in.
I think that's correct.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm gonna open this up to the public, because we always do. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak for or against this text amendment application? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ellen Hagedis. I live in Churchill South, adjacent to the firehouse on White Plains Road. We are anxiously awaiting the new construction of our own mixed-use building that just got raised earlier this week. I'm a member of Connect, which is congregations organized for a new Connecticut, and we have undertaken a plan in Bridgeport, Stratford, Trumbull, and Fairfield to address the issue of affordable housing. I lived in Fairfield for about 33 years, so I'm very familiar with that, but not as familiar with Trumbull because I've only been here for 7 years. I'm very interested in these projects, and I think the 55 plus is wonderful because I certainly fall into that category. I'm just wondering why it's being restricted to 55 plus. There are a lot of young people who would enhance our town,
Right.
who
So-
don't qualify for that. So I was just wondering.
I will give you the benefit, because we generally don't get into a back and forth with
Okay.
people, because we just ask whether you're for or against the
Okay.
project. But I'll just offer you simply, the town has a moratorium in place against high-density developments, other than if it's age restricted.
Okay.
And the caveats are, people say, Reefer Madness, right? For those of us that are old enough to be familiar with the movie Reefer Madness, right? It's the apartment madness, right? Oh, it's going to ruin the schools, it's going to overburden facilities and our capabilities, right? And what we have said in each of the studies that have come up is all the projections from each of the studies for each of the developments that have come have proven true or less impact. And the only way to determine true impact is time. So we have a couple new developments, and some of them are still being filled, and Trumbull's the place to be. So the development impact is currently in place and being evaluated. So you don't want to jump ahead. So that's one of the reasons why the moratorium is in place. And the over 55 generally do not come with a myriad of school-age children and other problems that come with open housing, right? It has nothing to do with the affordability factor. It has to do with the municipal provision.
Well, I appreciate that explanation. I'm definitely in favor of these kinds of options for people. When the proposal was put in front of us for the property very close to us, I was a little hesitant because the traffic on White Plains Road getting out from Pequannock, you can, sing a song while you're waiting, but I think it's worth it. I think as a community, we need to come together for the benefit of everyone.
Thank you.
And so we're really looking forward to that new structure there. And I think anything that we can do affordably is great. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to speak for or against? No? Hearing none? Okay. At this time, I'm going to let you make a closing statement. Here's what I'm going to do, just so you're clear, right? I am going to close the public comment, and I'm going to leave the hearing open just in case, and we are not going to vote until next month, because this is a change to the town. This is a change. This is a significant change. I don't think there's an issue tonight. I don't want anybody to naysay or positive say one way or the other. This way it'll give the other two commissioners time to view the tape, come, and we can all sit here, and if there's any questions that come up between now and January, we can answer them. So you can make your closing statement. It's technically going to be open if anything happens, but I don't intend to say, come represent for the other two. It's done. They're going to have to view the tape and then be prepared. And if they're not prepared, they can say no, and they'll recuse themselves. But that's what we're going to do tonight as we move forward. I don't see any issues, but go ahead and make your closing statement.
Understood, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think that's the best way to do this. I do agree that this is a change for the town,
Right.
and having all 5 commissioners be able to weigh in is the best way to do this. And I fully agree that, we don't want to have any issues
Right.
underlying this. So thank you. Again, I just want to reiterate that what we're trying to do here is fulfill those tasks that the town set forth in its IL2 study, in its affordable housing plan, by permitting age-restricted, affordable housing within the IL2 zone, within a neighborhood that is largely residential already, particularly to the south and to the west, and in an area that's going to make sense, that's commutable for people if they're still working, and provides them space, recreational space if they're not working, to be able to do what they want to do on the property. And we think this is a great project. We appreciate all of the back and forth we've had with town staff. We really do thank them for their help with this, and we look forward to being back in front of you in January
Great.
for a vote. So thank
Thanks
you
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public portion of this hearing, and I'll take a motion to table this application till next month. Mr. Deacon, seconded by Ms. Delvecchio. All in favor, aye. 1, 2, 3. We're good. Next, is applicant 2421 here for Reservoir Avenue? Are you guys here? So I'll go out of order and do you next. All right, so just point of privilege, we're just going to skip the next one because it's ours, and we'll go to number 3, text amendment. Application 2105 to 2125 Reservoir Avenue LLC is requesting to create Article 2, Section 2.8, Workforce Residence District Overlay Zone in a Residence A Zone to construct residential units for workforce housing. Copy of the regulation is on file with Trumbull P&Z office and the town clerk. File 2421. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, I'm Attorney.
Green light. On the base of the microphone. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Attorney Stephen Bellis. I'm with the Pellegrino Law Firm. I live in Shelton, and I represent the applicant 2105-2125 Reservoir Avenue. And we're here, as the chairman has suggested, just for an overlay zone text amendment. That's all we're talking about tonight. Before I get into the particulars of this overlay zone, I just wanted to call up James Amon, who was the Speaker of our House in our legislature, because he has a little insight on workforce housing, and then I'll address the commission, if that's all right, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, good to see you again. I was here, I guess, I don't know, 4 months ago, I'm not quite sure. And since then, I represent Mr. Shapiro, my firm, IGS, for the record, James Amon, 515 Popes Island Road, Milford, Connecticut. I represent Mr. Shapiro up in Hartford as a lobbyist. My partner couldn't be here today, Michael Rell. He apologizes, but he has family business on Friday. His mom had passed away, as you may know, and she's being buried, but he wanted to be here tonight. We've been working pretty hard, Mr. Chairman. Talked to a lot of legislators about workforce housing. Certainly, to the information on the text amendment that you've been working hard on here in Trumbull has been very well received. It's very bipartisan. Quite frankly, as you know, Mr. Chairman, it's because 8-30G has been a very complicated issue for many elected officials. And they see this as something positive, something they can talk to their constituents back home about and get support. So there seems to be overwhelming support on it. Majority Leader Rojas, who has been appointed kind of as the overall housing guru on affordable housing, workforce housing, and other issues up there. We have met with him. He's really charged up about workforce housing, especially the language that you've been working on. And we're hoping to mirror it. Session starts on January 8th. We'll be putting in a bill on that concerning workforce housing. We can report back to let you know how things are going. We feel pretty positive that we're going to get support this year on that particular language. If things go well, language will be signed by July. If things don't go by July, it's usually by January of 2026. So I just want to commend you on the work on this text amendment, and hopefully we can mirror that up in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Jim. So as you all know, an overlay zone is permitted by state statute. And this particular overlay zone is not only permitted by state statute, but I think it's consistent with your 2014 plan of development. In your plan, it says, quote, encouraging housing affordable to working families and single individuals. That's on page 61 of your plan. Your plan also talks about let market forces prepare housing alternatives on page 64. And they would like to see in the plan deed restricted property, and this overlay zone provides for deed restrictions. That's on page 67. The workforce housing zone that we're proposing is also consistent with your Trumbull 2023 through 2028 housing plan. I guess right now Trumbull has about 316 units which are deed restricted at 30% or less of the annual income. And the goal of that plan was to increase the number of workforce housing units. That's on page 24 of your plan. So I think this overlay zone meets those stated goals. Now, as I said tonight, I'm only going to be addressing a text amendment. So this will become a new regulation in your books if it passes. And I think what Jim was saying was that he liked the amendment that Jim Cordone and I worked on together and are presenting to you so much that he's using it for his state legislature to use it as a model for the state. So I commend him for doing that. Anyway, the particulars of this overlay zone is that it's only can be used for parcels of land in town that are 1 acre to 5 acres. The area is limited. It's not throughout the entire town. It's limited to an area in a residential zone A that is not more than 300 feet from an IL2 zone. The density in this kind of zone is limited. It can not be more than 50 dwelling units, so that would be a maximum if someone were to come in under this particular text amendment. There are other limitations as the bulk standards I think are pretty standard, you know, with the height of buildings being 40 feet and impervious area not exceeding 80%. There's pretty good buffers and setbacks. There's restrictions on those as well. There's parking requirements of at least 1.25 spaces for a 1-bedroom unit and studio and 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom unit. I'm not going to bore you with reading all the details, but there's requirements for the building standards and where the properties have to be spaced between each other, landscaping, open space and lighting, all those kinds of things, trash removal, stormwater management, everything that I think helps protect a town and keep it not only safe, but looking good. So this workforce housing is applicable. If someone were to come in under this text amendment, they would have to have at least 40% of the units be set aside as workforce housing. And that definition is anyone having income between 60 and 120% of the average medium income in your area. The statute, the text amendment also states that these units would count towards the 10% affordability goal that the town has, and they would count towards your moratorium.
So let's stay there for a second.
Sure.
This was part of the questions that came up months ago, right?
Yeah.
So you have to explain to me, maybe between you and I'll ask staff and this
Sure.
attorney, somebody's got to make me smarter than I am right now.
I'm
right?
not sure I can do that, but I'll try.
So, if somebody says, in a zone we're going to create, that you have to have between 60% and 120% of the median income, and the affordable housing rule is 80%, how legally are you saying to us that anybody that comes in who's between the 80 and 120% that is going to rent in, if one of these zones was created, how we could legally count that as affordable housing numbers when they don't meet the state criteria for affordable housing?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I can answer that one, I think. So the affordable housing statute is 8-30G, right?
Right.
And in 8-30G, you have either so many units set aside at 60%, and it's actually 15% of the units are set aside at 60%, and 15% of the units are set aside at 80% of AMI. That's the affordable housing statute 8-30G. The workforce text amendment we have here, and the workforce program that CHAFA runs in the states called Build for Connecticut, okay? And they define workforce housing as being between 60 and 120% of AMI. So they make it, the CHAFA, when they use the definition of workforce housing, makes a distinction between workforce housing and 830G affordable housing.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Now tell me how they marry. That, you didn't tell me that part yet.
How they marry? They're
My
separate.
question
Yeah.
was specific.
Yeah.
I understand everything you said.
Okay, good.
My question is, you just described the definition under CHAFA and the definition under 830G.
Yeah.
We're required to have X number of 830G on a percentage to be able to or not put in moratoriums and have more control.
Yeah.
You made a statement that said workforce housing can be
Qualifies.
used and qualify.
Yes.
My question is, if somebody is in the 80 to 120% in the workforce, how do those numbers legally qualify under what
Yeah.
regulation? Because you're telling me it does, and
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you I don't see it and understand
Yeah, I
it. That's
understand
all.
your logic 100%, but what I am told, and you certainly can check it out, and what I am told is that the Department of Housing recognizes this kind of program and will allow it to count towards your moratorium on affordable housing, even though this is not affordable housing, this is workforce housing, and also count to the points provided that they are deed restricted. And I think that what
Deed restricted 60 to 120?
deed restricted in the time period of the, usually that I'm told it's 10 years.
Yeah, no, I asked, I'm focusing on the 60 to 120.
Yeah, the 60 to the 120 is the workforce definition that they allow for you to get that credit.
Okay?
Steve, just tell them that you get more points for a 60% unit, they give you more credit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it's less as it goes up, but you're still getting partial credit for the 100s and 120s, as long as they're deed restricted. That answers his question.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my client's explaining to me that, maybe I didn't articulate it properly or well, that you do get credit, and you just get more credit if it's 60%, and you get maybe a fraction of a credit if it's over 80 up to 100.
Attorney Bellis, I think the chairman's point, and I think we do want to make sure the language is clear.
Okay.
Is that, and we can work on this if this is continued to next month, is we want to make sure that 40% is counted towards the moratorium.
Yeah, and that was my intention.
Yes.
If it's not articulated correctly in the text amendment, we can clean it up. But that was my understanding when I called the Department of Housing.
Okay.
They even have a program, they call it Build for Connecticut. And if a developer wants to borrow money under this workforce housing program, and it's 60 to 120. They will make you sign a deed restriction for the life of the loan, and these loans happen to be 20 years, but no less than 6. So even if you refinanced it, you're stuck for 6 years. And they wrote me an email and stated that it counts towards the town's moratorium points, and it counts towards the town's 10% affordability.
Okay.
And I have that from the Department of Housing.
Yeah, no, I think the chairman's point is well taken, that we just want to make sure the language is clear,
Yeah.
that 40% does count towards and so I think we can work on that language.
I think we can work on that too. I have no problem working with your council to make that clearer. But the goal was to have all 40% count as affordable housing.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, and I get your points, and I get the understanding of what workforce is. In a perfect world or imperfect world, something like this happens. And in the 40%, I don't understand, and that'll get worked out later, how much has to be between 60 and how much has to be,
Yeah.
can be 120 within that 40. What's that ratio? Or is it open to whatever the market will provide? And what happens if everybody's at 120% and nobody's at, you understand?
I get
There's
it.
so much,
I fully get
there's
it.
a lot of fluidity in there for what does this mean and how does this relate to a totally separate 830G
I
qualification?
think I can fix that language to make it so that you and I are on the same page, where you get all your credits for 40%. I may have to tweak that paragraph, which I don't mind doing. So if this text amendment were to be approved, then there's a procedure that an applicant would have to request a zone change and also file what we call a special permit and follow your rules under the special permit regulations of your of Trumbull. You'd have to obviously get the wetlands, water pollution control, approval from the Trumbull Police Commission, everything that you would do in any other project. So we try to mirror what's done normally for this particular text amendment. The bottom line, I think, for this particular text amendment is, okay, Steve, why do we need this? Well, if you don't have something similar to this, or this particular text amendment, then a developer may choose to do an 830G, and we're trying to avoid that because those can be done anywhere all over town, and the density's not limited, and you know the whole can of worms that presents. So this, I think, gives the town a little more structure and control over a project, and it limits the density, can never be more than 50 units. And it gives you control by the special permit to look at safety, health, and all the things that you can normally look at. And I think it also satisfies the long-term goal of trying to make things a little more affordable for certain segments of the population. I mean, we talk about these numbers like, 60 to 120%. To give it some context, I think Trumbull's around 117,000. It's close. So that would be the 100%. So people making 117,000. And then if you were to take 60, 70, or 80%, those are ballpark $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. Those are the kind of applicants that this would address. If I'm only here tonight to discuss the text amendment, and I heard you talk to the other applicant about holding off.
Right, and anything,
and I have no
anything,
problem with
no,
that.
anything,
Yeah.
anything you wanted to add, like all pre-applications and any text amendments, a lot of the commissioners prefer to see a picture board, like, what does this mean? And what is it? We've heard discussion in the past before. So anything you want to talk about the potential down the road, because you're not here just for the benefit of Trumbull. You're here for your client who has an intent in an area
Yeah.
to hopefully use this language. So discussing it just makes common sense. And at least in a 10,000 foot of, we're talking in this area, this is what,
Yeah,
whatever
no,
you'd
no.
like to provide,
Yeah.
because I'm also going to ask staff for some input too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, obviously, no one's going to go and design plans in a building if there's no text amendment to, have it match up to. But the idea here is, and it's pretty apparent from the name of the company, the properties that my client owns is at 2105-2125 Reservoir Avenue. It's about 1.7 acres. And that property is a property that, if this text amendment were to be approved, we would come in with a special exception to try to make that piece of property work under this text amendment. So we're talking about a 1.7 acre parcel on Reservoir Avenue. I'm not going to, I don't have a site plan that's designed yet. Because why would you do that if you don't have a regulation, that's approved by your commission? You just wouldn't. But there's been discussions with staff, and we're not trying to hide the ball. It's in a very good location, I think, as far as the town of Trumbull is concerned. This is not something that's smack in the middle of Trumbull, where it would would be an eyesore. This is tucked away. And I think, I don't know, I think it'd be a very good positive for the town.
I'm gonna ask staff. Rob, do you have anything you want to add at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let you know that MetroCog and Naugatuck Valley to take a look at this text amendment and say that there's no regional impact. From taking a look at this text amendment, I just had a few comments, just things that maybe the commission should just look at. When you're looking at section 2.8.2, establishment of District A, says a WFRD shall contain a gross area not less than 1 acre and not more than 5 acres. Now that should probably be a discussion with the commission of if 5 acres is too much or too little, and that the underlying zone be residential. Do we want to be more specific? Do we want to say a residential, or because we do have 3 residential zones, and this is your opportunity of it being an overlay zone, that do you want it to stretch out through the whole town, or do you want to stretch it within a certain zone based on the density of those zones? So that's something you want to take a look at. From looking at the other questions, do you want, again, it's a max of 50 units. That should be a discussion. The maximum height is 40 feet, which is similar to the residential A zone. So any type of development is probably going to be uniform with what's around it if it is in a residential A zone. Let's see. And, this regulation shows that the commission has discretion over if it wants to move forward with this application, with a proposed application. And they do have to go through the inland wetlands, WPCA, and the police department before it even comes in front of this commission. So there is a lot of review of this of a potential site plan before it comes in front of this commission. We did talk about how there is a need for other types of housing. The 40% with units between 60 and 120%. I keep feeling that to make a larger impact in the community, going to that 60% rate, even 80% is really helping people. Once we get to those higher numbers, we're not really changing, I'd say, lives or, family situations. So I think focusing on helping those that really need it, and those percentages, looking at lower percentages, is definitely a positive that, we may want to think about. And then we're getting site specific again with the IL2, has to be 300 feet from an IL2 zone. Is that something we want to talk about as well too? So there's a lot of question marks that I think the commission, should take a look at this regulation and see what we want to do. As we stated, that the applicant does have a location in mind on Reservoir Road. So I think just keeping that in mind and taking a look at it. I know you've seen it on the GIS, I believe, that location. So, it seems kind of tucked away off the road. Like I said, the height is consistent with the area. So I think those are positives, but I think there's some other things that we should probably talk about. Thank you.
Okay. If you're all set, I'm going to ask the public if you're all set. I'm going to go to the commissioners first, actually. Rich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of notes. First of all, I believe 50 feet is already an established maximum. And we mentioned that as a new max, but I believe that it already is. So that's not lowering it from what it already is elsewhere.
I'm sorry, 50 feet of what?
Height.
Height.
There was also a mention of a max 40 feet. We'll get to that later. So
It's supposed to be a max of 40.
Okay.
It's a max of 40 feet.
Okay.
The 50 is the number of units.
Excuse me. Yes, I see. Okay, my fault. So again, 50 is the already the max on a specific property. So there's really no change there. So concern here, the workforce district is only going to be applied to residential areas that border IL2 zones. There are only two IL2 zones. There's the lower reservoir area and up at Spring Hill Trefoil. So there's a very thin sliver of properties that could possibly be within that 300 feet and in a residence area. We've seen a different amendment today come forward saying very specifically that it's in an industrial zone and nowhere else, and has to be greater than 5 acres. We now see here very specifically that it has to be less than 5 acres and out of an industrial zone in a residential area, but it's right next to the industrial zone. So it begs the question, why only in residential areas when the commission right now is considering industrial zones, which are largely outdated for industrial use, for the proliferation of residential housing. This application on its own, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, I don't know, but it's almost directly in conflict with another application for another zone change or creation of an overlay zone that we're hearing right now. It's very difficult to sit here and look at each other and say, well, for this one, it should be less than 5 acres, no more. For industrial, it has to be 5 acres, no less, even though they are by definition right next to each other. We could theoretically have an application, which is your neighbor, 5 acres plus, where we force them to have more than 5 acres. And then we force them to have less than 5 acres. And they have to be next to each other. And if it's outside of 100 yards, 300 feet, then it's not qualifying. If it's such a good idea, and perhaps it is, then shouldn't it be open everywhere? Why restrict it to next to industrial zones? Why restrict it from being outside of the industrial zone? It's something we should consider. These are both valid and probably very reasonable and reasonable applications. It's just very difficult right now to say the exact opposite to you as we're going to say to the other applicant. Plus, minus, in, out, they're neighbors. If we want to create a housing row here, perhaps that's a perfect place to put it. But these two conflicting ways to do so raise some serious issues that we should discuss as a commission.
Yeah. No, I understand your point. The only thing that I would add, and Mr. Bellis can certainly opine whatever he wants to say on behalf of his client, but from the planning and zoning perspective, while your questions are valid and the points you bring up, the variable you didn't discuss is the criteria for who would reside there. That's the difference. One has a restriction of 55 and over. These do not. These would be open to 100% of school-age children in every apartment. That's the difference on the limitation.
And not only that, but minimum 60% one bedroom or studio. That means up to 40% could be 2. Doesn't mention a prohibition on 3. And we know we've talked about that before.
Right.
Whether we want to go there, we'll see.
Yeah, all the lower number criteria hasn't been
Right.
out. Right.
But there is 40% at the bare minimum, 2 apartments.
Yeah,
Two
I don't want
bedrooms.
to speak on your behalf, Mr. Bellis. Feel free to exchange with him.
I understand what the gentleman is saying, and I think Rob touched on it, a little bit in his remarks. That it's a planning issue, and if you want to expand it to different zones, then you have to listen to the chairman's point. How will it impact the town if there's a lot of school-aged children or whatnot? In Shelton, they don't want residences in the industrial zones because they want to keep it industry and attract manufacturing. So they don't want any residential. Every town is different. So there's no right or wrong answer. But you're right, it's a planning issue and you can discuss it. My job is to come up with a text amendment that would allow certain properties, but if you want to expand now on that, that's something for you to discuss. That limitation can be obviously amended in the text, but that's not for me to say, I don't think.
Anything else?
One other item, 2.8.4, it mentioned rental. Would these be all rental? Or are these available for purchase? It mentions specific restrictions to renters. At least 40%,
Yeah.
maximum allowed rents. So these are not going to be,
Market, yeah, the affordable housing, it's all rent.
okay, by default?
Yeah,
Okay. That's all then. Thank you.
Karen?
One thing that just, to me, is not clear, and it's just a minor, well, maybe not minor, is under the development limitations and the density. It says a maximum of 50 units may be permitted.
What paragraph, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, under development limitations,
Yes, I'm there, go ahead.
a maximum of 50 units may be permitted on any one lot in a workforce. Shouldn't we define what a lot is? I mean, I'm thinking we're assuming it's an acre, but I think that should be defined.
I think we have it between 1 and no more than
Between 1 and
5.
5 is the
But
definition.
per unit, per
So-
unit, okay, so
so
it's
if
an
a lot-
assumption that it's an acre.
No,
It's minimum, yeah.
a minimum.
So
Okay.
you're saying, what if they have 5 acres and they split it up?
Yeah, I just
And
think
they
it's
have 1 acre per parcel, then they could have 50 units
Yeah.
on each parcel?
Yeah, I just think it's not, to me, it's not clear. Maybe that's,
The intent was no matter whether you have 1 acre or 5 acres, you can only get 50 units.
okay, thank you.
That's
That's what was not clear to me.
Yeah, I
That's-
understand.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. That makes sense.
But if they're subdivided,
They'd have to come to
Well,
your
this is
commission.
this is an overlay in the residential A zone. It's half acre.
Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody wanted to play games, they could try for the overlay and then come back later and try and split it.
But that's before your commission, and you
Right.
can deal with it.
Right. No, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's asking a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Anything else, Karen?
That's it.
All right. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak for or against this application? Okay. Hearing none, you want to do a closing?
No, I
That's
think,
it?
I think we did fine.
Okay, so you're gonna get the same closing that I gave the
Yeah.
other folks, which is, yours is a little different. There is no guarantee of pass or fail for January, but in preparation for that and the review of the other commissioners in next month's hearing, there's some love and attention required here with details that were brought up for definitions and explanation and criteria for what volumes would be 60% versus
Yeah.
80% versus 120. How is that going to work out? The detail, because if you're asking for a text amendment to go into our regulations that controls a governing body of what can be developed, and it also is going to plug in to a state regulation that we're trying to comply with,
Right.
it is too ambiguous as sits right there. All right.
Yeah.
So whoever you all have to work with, and again, there's no promise of pass or fail because once that's all done, So
Yeah.
we're gonna table this, and unlike the other application, you may be coming back up to discuss.
Yeah, I don't mind
The-
doing
the
that.
detail
And,
again.
if I have permission, I can work with Jim on the language.
Yeah. No.
I'll do
Absolutely.
that,
Because
so-
it's
Yeah,
still
no,
in
no,
application.
I'm trying to make
Absolutely.
it straightforward, and if
No, I understand.
if I didn't
I think you
articulate
got
it, yeah.
right. I think you
I'll
got what
fix
you're
it.
looking for tonight. So.
Yeah, I appreciate the help. Thanks.
Yeah, nobody did. All right, so at this time, I'll take a motion to table the hearing until January. Mr. Deacon, seconded by Karen, all in favor, aye, 1, 2, 3. Okay, the next application is from ourselves here, which is Number 2, text amendment, Trumbull Planning and Zoning requesting create Article 16, Section 4, regulation to comply with Connecticut law, compliance and regulation, file 2419. Mr. Cordone's going to discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the text amendment is fairly straightforward and sort of states what the state of the law is. It just is intended to make sure that if in any situation our regulations do not comply with state law, we acknowledge that state law is what controls. And it is just sort of a belt and suspenders method to make sure that our intent is to comply with state law. And we are diligently always trying to do that, but state law is always changing. And if we should have not caught something, we're saying, hey, our regulations are intended to comply with state law. Are there any questions? Thank you, commissioners. Public comment. You have to ask for public comment.
Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on this application? Staff, you have any other input besides what Mr. Cordone gave?
No, sir.
All right. No one from the public here to comment? Any comments from commissioners before we close the hearing? No, motion to close. Karen, seconded, me, that's 3. Motion to approve. I need a motion to approve that this complies with our comprehensive plan and our zone map of regulations, keeping with the PNC development per 83A, and effective date would be 12/30. Is there a motion? Yeah, we didn't pass it. We've closed it. Now we're going to pass it. You make that motion.
As stated.
Karen, second. Any further discussion? None. All in favor, aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're good. All right, is that it?
The Jim amendment has passed.
Is that it? Planners report, anything?
No.
Good. Minutes that were provided from the last time we met, which I think was summer. This is the longest. We missed 2 meetings. We never, in 15 years, never did that.
Reviewed the minutes from the September 18th regular meeting and found them to be in their usual order and make a motion to approve.
Second, Karen, thank you. All in favor, no questions, aye. 1, 2, 3, we're done. Motion to adjourn after we say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Thank you for all your work all year.
So moved.
Good holidays. Karen, we're closed. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Dennis, are we off?